Alright, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about arch support. I've been getting a lot of questions lately from people saying how do they build up insoles to create the right amount of arch support. So I'm going to do a really quick overview today, and then it's sort of up to you to take these instructions and run with them. So first of all, I'm going to show you a couple of things that I'm going to use. I've got a few little pieces of memory foam here. This is like 1.7 to 2 mil, but you can get any thickness really. We're going to be layering it up depending on how much arch support you actually need. So I want to quickly talk you through where to put it. I want to show you on a last. So if I were to put a last on, this insole is obviously a bit too big for this last, but you can see the instep there is kind of filled in by the last. So you can get custom lasts made that have an allowance in the last for a built-up instep or for arch support, but that's quite expensive to do. So here's what I recommend. I recommend if you're making closed-toed shoes that have to be made using a last, that you actually add your arch support after you've finished making the shoe. And if you're making a shoe like a sandal strappy style thing, if you're making that using your foot and not a last, then you can build it up to start with. But keep in mind, you still need to drill your heel in the back. So although you could build up arch support sort of in this area, it might get in the way of your heel. So I always recommend putting your arch support in a finished shoe. So let's get started and I'll show you how I do it. First of all, you take your insole. Now it's exactly the same process if you're doing a flat shoe as well. And then what I would do is actually press my foot on there like that. And I'd take a pencil and just kind of draw inside where my arch is so that I can see where I need the arch support to go. So I've already done that on this one, and I'll just kind of highlight it a little bit so you can see a bit better, but I've just got sort of like a half moon shape there. And now what I want to do is basically cut layers of foam to build that up. I recommend you do it bit by bit and keep putting your foot on the insole to see if you've gone high enough. It's much easier to do it that way rather than trying to like measure the depth of your instep. This way you'll just be doing it to whatever is the most comfortable for you. And you can do it slightly different on both feet as well. So let's start with this one. I've got some masking tape here, and all I'm going to do is place a strip over the top like that, and I can actually see through this layer of masking tape where my half moon shape is. So I'm just going to trace it, and then obviously tracing the edge of the insole. And you'll see I've got like a little pattern there now. So what I would do is just transfer that onto a bit of paper. Okay, and I forgot my scissors, bear with me. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and cut that out. Okay, so that essentially is pattern number one, and that is gonna sit in that area like that. If you wanted to build up identical arch support on both shoes, you would literally flip that pattern to get the same for the other side. But I'm just going to do one for today. So I'm now going to take this piece and I'm going to trace it on some paper. And I'm just going to label that first one with a 1. And now I'm going to cut out, sorry, no, I'm not going to cut out. I've got the second one traced here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace a line on the inside of this line that I've drawn. And I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to go like maybe 3 or 4 mil, maybe just 3 to start with. So we're kind of going to be building up like a staggered raised area to fill in that arch support. So we just kind of want to keep the patterns getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So then I can cut that one out, and I'll probably do this about 4 times before I, like, make 4 layers before I put my foot on it and see how it feels. Okay, so I'll label that one as 2, and then we just repeat that process. I'm going to go trace it again. And these really don't have to be perfect. What we're going to do at the end after we've layered them up is we're actually going to put one whole piece of foam across the whole thing, just so that you don't see that transition quite as much. And depending on how thick your foam is, of course, you can do maybe only 2 layers. Maybe that's all you need. I'm thinking maybe I might only do 3 layers on this instead of 4, and then we'll just see how that feels. Because I don't have particularly the highest arch, but I'm not completely flat-footed either. Okay, so I've now got these 3 patterns. 1 and then 2 sits on top of that, and then 3 sits on top of that. I'm kind of making like a little foam pyramid. And then I can take a piece of foam and just go ahead and cut them out. So I'm just going to trace them on there and cut them out. And these shapes can look completely different to the one that I'm doing, depending on sort of what your arch looks like, really, and how much support you actually want to put in there. So you can see I've traced those 3. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'll go ahead and cut them out. Okay, so I've cut out those 3 pieces. I've got 1, and then I've got a slightly smaller one, and then a slightly smaller one again, like that. And now it's sort of like having a look at how they fit. So what I usually do at this point is that I just gently hold them in place on the insole like that, and then I'll put my foot on it and see whether I need to go higher or whether I've actually done too much and I need to take a layer off. So let's just see how that feels. That actually feels perfect for me, so I'm not going to do that 4th layer. One thing worth mentioning, if you are doing like I am here on a high heel or a mid heel last, I made sure that I put my foot on the insole in this position rather than putting my foot flat on it like that, because I want to make sure that the arch support that I've built is actually filling the gap while my foot is at the correct angle. So if you were doing flat shoes, obviously you'd have a completely flat insole and you put your foot on it flat, basically. So I'm really happy with that. I'm going to put that to the side, and what I want to do is I want to make a piece of foam that would go over the top of the whole thing. So this piece is a bit short, just bear with me. I've just grabbed a longer piece of foam there, and essentially I want to make a piece that covers the whole insole, so I need to sort of cut it out like that. So usually what I'll do is place the insole on the foam and trace around the whole thing. And then I can go ahead and cut that out as well. So what we're sort of creating now is like a reverse insole sock. Essentially, we are going to use this foam build-up as our insole sock once we have finished the shoes, so that we can put it all in at one. So I usually do a full one for the final piece of foam when I'm doing this, but you don't have to. You can see from the insole sock on this shoe, it sort of finishes around about there. So you can cut it shorter just as long as it is covering the built up arch support area. So here's what I want to do. I basically want to take these pieces that I've made and just figuring out exactly where they are on this insole. So I'm putting that big piece over the top, and then I'm just marking on the very edge where my original lines were. So I've sort of just put a little mark here and a little mark here so that I can see that's where my original drawing had started. So I now know that the first piece is going to sit between those lines, and I can draw that on. Now the reason I'm not just gluing it straight on is because we're actually going to build this up upside down. So I'm going to put the second piece in the middle there, and I'm going to kind of trace that roughly. And then the middle piece as well, just right in the center. Okay, so the idea is that we're building the arch support underneath, and that then we'll place that on the insole like this with the arch support already built up in there, which means I need to glue the smallest piece on first. So I'm gonna take my strong glue. You can use the non-toxic glue as well, but it just takes way longer to dry, especially when it soaks into the foam. So I just go ahead and use the stronger stuff. Okay, so I'm just getting glue on both sides of everything that I want to stick. Okay, so I'll start by taking the smallest piece and filling it into the little outline that I've drawn on there. And then I'll just top up a little bit of glue on top of that. Really important when you're layering these pieces up that you get the glue around the edges of the piece that you've just put down. I don't know if you can see that. So that sticking the next piece, you can sort of seal it down around the edges. And this is going to help us have sort of like a nice flow, I guess. So I have built up, I'll just show you in here so you can see, I've built up those 3 layers in there, sort of sandwiching each side in one at a time. And then what happens if I flip it over? So if I take that and put it onto the insole board, you can see that the arch support has been raised in that area, and you can see in there how much extra I've put in. But what we're getting at the top of the shoe is a nice smooth transition rather than a jagged built up type of thing. And that's why I always like to put a full piece over the top. Now, what I would do next, because essentially we've created an insole sock here, is that I would put a piece of leather over the top of that whole piece. And once I have finished making the shoe, that whole piece, this is for the wrong foot, but that whole piece would then go inside and be the insole sock. This one I've made is not for this shoe, but you get the idea. It would go inside like that. And I hope that's been helpful.